Thank you very much for staying on the marketplace. Welcome back. You can always stay interactive with us by tweeting at Joy Business GH and on Facebook, Joy Business is our page. Now to the very first story. The country's second major hydrocarbon development, the Trinidad Enyira and Intome 10, has exported some significant volumes of crude oil since it began commercial production. The field, since August this year, has exported 1.65 million barrels of crude. But is the 10 field living up to its expectation as a major alternative of crude oil production to tallow? George Wiafe tells us more.
Some analysts, looking at the volumes of crude that has been exported so far, the 10 field could indeed help improve the fortunes of tallow in terms of the daily production of crude exported from the country's oil fields and its profit. The field is said to hold about 2 billion barrels of crude reserves. It started commercial production in August with an initial daily production of 23,000 barrels of crude and is expected to increase to 50,000 barrels a day before the end of this year. Some industry watchers are of the view that the 10th field has come on time to help stabilize the amount of crude exported, looking at the current challenges with the Jubilee field, which was even threatening oil production and the country's power generation. Tallow yesterday announced that it is reducing the amount of gas it exports to their turbo plant as it carries out some works on the equipment on the FPSO used in extracting crude from the seabed. This is part of a grand plan to finally correct the current problems with the turret bearing on the FPSO, which will result in some shutdowns this year and possibly early part of next year. Chief Executive of Tallow Aiden Heavy tells Joy Business these works will help address all the problems with the Jubilee FPSO.
Well, Jubilee's, we've pretty well nailed down the problem in Jubilee, and we have a solution in place and we're working on that. So that's pretty well in hand now, and Jubilee's producing pretty well with the interim measures that we have in place. And we should have the first section of putting the FPSO on a fixed heading done by the end of this year. So it's pretty well on track.
Yeah. And what timelines are you giving to yourself in terms of completing work on the Jubilee?
Well, the main stabilizing of the FPSO will be done in the fourth quarter of this year, and then next year we'll fix that. We'll permanently moor it in a fixed position, and then the cam buoy, which we'll put in is probably in 2018. But by probably around June of next year, Jubilee will be back to full production.
For Tallow, it has put in place measures to ensure that the current problems with the Jubilee FPSO, which affected volumes of crude exported, power generation in Ghana, and decline in revenue to the state, become a thing of the past when 10 hit full production, whilst correcting the current problems with the Jubilee FPSO.
Meanwhile, Ghana Gas says supply of gas from the Jubilee field has been cut down to 50 million metric standard cubic feet. A statement by the national gas processor says it was informed by Tallow Oil that the current situation is due to the precarious state of the turret system on the FPSO Kwame Nkrumah offshore on the Jubilee field.
I've informed us they're doing some work on the FPSO upstream, and as a result, they've reduced their projected gas supply, natural gas supply to us from the 1st of November to 21st of November. That is the reason for the dip in supply. Yes, we've informed people there and others as to what is happening with them, and I think that they are aware. Do we anticipate whether it will impact negatively on power generation? I cannot speak to that because we are not a power generating company. Number two, yes, in as much as it will lead to a consequential reduction in the availability of power, it does not mean that it's going to have an impact nationwide because we have various sources of generation. And again, there's been some significant improvement in generation, for example, from Akosomo.
All right, so that was Alfred Ubami, Communications Manager of Ghana Gas. Now to the downstream sector, the National Petroleum Authority, NPA, has revised the national sulfur specification for diesel imported into the country from maximum 500 parts per million to 50 parts per million or lower, effective January 2017. Meanwhile, the Tema Oil Refinery has been given a 3-year grace period to reconfigure its equipment to attain the 50 ppm mark set in the draft national standard. But the Chamber of Consumers, Petroleum Consumers, insists any such revision must be for a period not exceeding 1 year. It also wants the Petrochemical Lab of Tor moved to an independent organization for testing. We're trying to link up with the Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers for some explanation on that. As and when we get him on the line, we'll put him through. But moving on, Vodafone Ghana says it will roll out 4G services for its customers soon after some pricing issues were sorted. The telecoms firm had earlier disclosed the service was not an immediate priority, sparking concerns Vodafone may lose out of the data market to its major competitor. But speaking to Joy Business after a visit to the offices of Multimedia, Chief Executive Yolanda Cuba said Vodafone is working on other ways to provide fast internet services to customers.
Customers of Vodafone will only have to wait a little longer to enjoy 4G LTE services. This, according to the Chief Executive Officer, Yolanda Cuba, has delayed due to some financing challenges. In an interview with Joy Business during a courtesy call paid to Multimedia Ghana Limited, she said the company has managed to maintain its position as the fastest internet service provider in the country and will continue to do so using other alternative avenues.
Hoping that at some point we will have access to 4G. At this stage, we're actually having some challenges around the financing of the pricing that was actually paid by MTN, which actually makes it very difficult for us, not just for us, for Airtel, for Tigo, and the others as well. It's very complicated for us to actually get right. However, do we acknowledge that 4G is a more efficient technology from a MNO perspective, from an operator perspective? Absolutely. Is 4G the only way you can actually increase speed? No, it's not. There's carrier aggregation, there's optimization of your network, and so on. So there are many ways in which you can actually achieve what you achieve in 4G from a customer perspective without the 4G spectrum.
On the direction of Vodafone, she promised Ghanaians faster and better services in the future.
I think what you can look forward to is a more attentive business. We want to be more attentive around customer issues. We want to be able to solve your customer issues quickly and also come with proactive ways in which we actually respond to you. We want to make sure that Ghana is actually digitally included going forward into the future years, because for us, every time we digitally actually include someone, every time we look at where the world is going around, the gigabyte society, the society that will live on data, it is important for us to be able to say, actually, we did all we could to actually make sure that no one is left behind.
The courtesy call on Multimedia Ghana Limited was to officially introduce the new Chief Executive Officer to the media and to strengthen ties between the telecom giant and the media giant.
Please, now, Cocoa Board says it has released sufficient funds to license buying companies for the purchase of cocoa beans from farmers this crop season. Now, this was contained in a statement issued by Cocoa Board earlier today. Now, George Rafi joins us now to tell us more about this statement and other developments in the industry. You're welcome, George.
Thank you, Rafi.
Now, so how did we get here?
Now, basically, if you can remember, in October this year, Cocoa Board went out to raise some $1.8 billion. Basically, it's for the purchase of cocoa beans for the next crop season, starting from October to September 2017. Okay. Now, basically, Cocoa Board is managing these funds. So they would own land to these licensed buying companies who are middlemen and supposed to purchase the raw bean from the farmers and then help export the beans out of the country for the various companies outside that want these beans. But Cocoa Board is saying that they have to do this thing in tranches, and therefore they're going to give it to these licensed buying companies in tranches for them to actually go and buy this bean. For every kilogram of cocoa bean that you're supposed, 64 kilogram of cocoa bean they're supposed to buy, you're supposed to pay the farmers 475 Ghana cedis to get this 64 kilogram bag of cocoa beans that they're going to get from these cocoa farmers.
You know how many license buying companies
there are quite a lot. I mean, over 100 license buying companies are currently in the system right now. So that is what is supposed to happen with respect to giving them a fraction of that money so they can buy the beans from the farmers.
When you say a fraction, how much in all has the Cocoa Board given out?
That is the problem here, because when you go through the statement and even when you try to engage some of the industry players, Cocoa Board is silent on this. Now, because they are saying that they cannot give everything out, they always give a fraction out to these license buying companies. When you engage the license buying companies, the argument is that these funds are not significant or sufficient enough for them to go out there and buy the beans. That don't forget that in terms of getting the good bean that you want, to get the good value when you send it out, it's between October and December. But what has happened now that they can't get the funds that they're looking for. For instance, if a big player sends a request to Cocoa Board that we need about 300 or 400 million Ghana cedis to go and purchase the bean, they get about 100 million or even 50 million Ghana cedis. And that the license buying companies are saying that is not significant enough to help them buy these beans from the farmers. So that is what is fueling this rumor in town that Cocoa Board hasn't got money, because these license buying companies are also saying that what we are getting is not significant enough to go out there and then buy the beans.
So the current development, what does it mean to the industry?
Now, two things here. For the license buying companies, they are saying that what is being given to them, or what is given to them, is not significant. So they cannot buy the beans that they are hoping to buy. Cocoa Board is saying that, well, this is what we can give it to you for now because some of you are misusing the funds. But if you look at just the release of the funds itself, it's critical, because Cocoa Board is saying that by the end of the crop season, you're looking at purchasing about 900,000 beans from cocoa farmers. So this would help. But if indeed the license buying companies are also saying that we are not getting the required funds to buy the beans, that could fuel some smuggling to neighboring countries, and that might affect the target that Cocoa Board is looking for.
That's quite unfortunate. And
that is what is happening on the ground there,
Let's hope it doesn't get there.
We hope so.
Thank you very much, George.
Thank you so much, Yafi.
George Yafi bringing us up to date on development of the Cocoa Board, paying license buyers for purchase of cocoa beans. You're still on the marketplace. We're taking a short break. Be back. Welcome back. Now, starting a business in the building and construction industry is quite tough. Projects Bureau Limited has, however, defied the odds to make the mark in just about a year since its establishment. Later today, we're meeting the entrepreneur, Habakkuk Amache Otabil. What's keeping him going for the full story? But for now, let's get some tidbits of what we expect at 5.
Habakkuk Amache Otabil is an entrepreneur with great determination. Today, he's trying to strike a deal for a construction project, one of several he's been able to secure within the 1 year he started Projects Bureau Limited. Amache originally wanted to be an agripreneur, but would later find himself working for a building and construction firm after school. Then, he started developing an interest in building and construction, but he knew it would be a tough industry to venture into.
I felt that I didn't have a choice but to start something. So yes, the fears were there, but I never looked at them.
What kind of fear?
At the beginning, I was worried about where to get customers, because I didn't know, and people didn't know me to be, okay, I was in the industry, but I was starting fresh. So I had to convince people to give me a job to do, and not knowing where the next salary would come from.
Finding clients, capital to start, and of course an office space, those would be Amache's initial headache.
Get the full story on Business Life later today. Now, the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, is to receive $60 million to upgrade its distribution network and further enhance its commercial capacity to improve revenue. However, the company's ability to pay back the money is being questioned. Under the deal between Ghana and the International Development Association, government will on-lend the money to ECG to be paid back in 17 years. But the ranking member on the Finance Committee of Parliament, Dr. Anthony Akotosei, says the power distributor will be in a serious default if the terms are not reviewed.
Last time we checked, the liabilities were close to 5 billion. So, out of necessity, we need to do what we can. So, first of all, I don't have any objection to the spirit of the law. But Speaker, secondly, either those are general direct concession. So, on that score, I don't have any difficulty. My difficulty is trying to find the means to take a concessionary loan at 1.5%, unless ECG, which is broke, and it don't charge ECG 5.3%. ECG cannot pay. You get it at 1%. Now the government is making profit for this. Completely opposite why we are taking the law. So this is a policy issue that must be explained to us. We are trying to make them financially viable. We borrow at 1.2%. So you are being 5%. Come in your they can be supported. Yes, it should not be free. But what we already do, we give them the same price. Now the government is acting like this is lending to ECG. But you are borrowing to save it from going through. This is something we can't accept. It is not helpful ECG do that. It is not helpful at all. I mean, I want the minister to say that.
On his part, Employment and Labour Relations Minister Haruna Idrisu says ECG must demonstrate commitment to its core duty and ensure it will pay back the loan.
One, it is true that ECG is in debt. It's also true that PRA is in debt. But fundamentally, there's been major initiative by government to deal with the debt of ECG and PRA, including the introduction of the energy sector against by government in order to address the debt associated with ECG and PRA. But Mr. Speaker, one of the points that he raised, if we can have an understanding, is probably to refer you to page 4 of your committee's report, in particular paragraph 6 and paragraph 7. Our responsibility under Article 181 is to look at the terms and conditions of the new agreement. But in the Chairman's report, in paragraph 7, he has added the on-lending terms to which the ranking member has responded. So, Mr. Speaker, let me also say that government has a new debt management package, which was announced by the minister in his last budget minister. And Mr. Speaker, I'll use another utility as an example. For instance, Ghana Water Company. Of all the years that government has gone on to borrow money to support Ghana Water, they are not ready to service the loan. Yet, they charge consumers for the money.
Now, Ghana will see improved crop yield if the country applies seriously. That's a prompt from Director of Crop Research Institute of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, Dr. Stella Abba-Enin. She says it has become critical for authorities to take steps to address the country's food security issues. Kwesi Debra reports.
Dr. Abba-Enin was unveiling a graduate program in plant breeding and biotechnology at the Crop Research Institute at Fumesia near Kumasi. She's convinced biotechnology will speed up initiatives by scientists to come up with improved crop variety.
Hitherto, plant breeders who had been trained did not have the skill to do biotechnology, but we recognize that biotechnology is a new tool that can facilitate the plant breeding process, it can give us quicker results, it can accelerate the progress, and in fact, it will give us results quicker. For example, conventional plant breeding would take us 10 years and sometimes more to come up with a new variety that is higher yielding, that is more resistant, and now talking about climate change, that is more resilient to climate. But now with biotechnology tools such as marker-assisted breeding through biotechnology, we are able to cut down on the time that it takes to come up with a variety.
Under the program, which is tailored for industry, students will acquire skills and focus on breeding crops adapted to Ghana's varied ecological zones. Program head Dr. Hans Edudapa says students will go through entrepreneurial training to enhance their business potential. In addition, they will learn French to prepare them for expanding and challenging global market.
Now a lot of people are graduating without jobs. So right from the onset, we want the students to know that if I'm a breeder and I don't have any job, I should be able to set myself up. We'll teach them, principles of entrepreneurship. We'll teach them French. In fact, I didn't have the opportunity to learn French, and therefore my job, they say, is limited to Anglophone countries. There are a lot of jobs out there, but if you are somebody who can speak French, then it opens you up.
Supporting for Joy News, Kwesi Debra.
For this afternoon's edition of The Marketplace, thank you very much once again for joining me, as always. My name is Emmanuel Boaji. Let's meet again tomorrow for more interesting developments in the world of business. Good afternoon.